Vicky asks, what do you look for when you hire? So we look for, that's actually, I'm glad you asked that because it's kind of a tricky question. You obviously, first of all, have to look for skills. You have to look for the right kind of skill set, and that's obviously a given. But one of the things we don't look at are resumes, because we kind of feel like resumes are just ridiculous. They're pretty much documents full of lies and exaggerations, and I think everyone knows this, but for whatever reason, people still kind of rely on the whole resume game to figure out who to hire. So whenever we get resumes, we just don't look at them. What we look at are the cover letters. And if the cover letters are written to us directly in a way that we could tell that someone wrote that letter to us, then we'll read it. And then we might look at the resume second. But if you can tell that it's really obvious that a cover letter was just mass produced and they just replaced our name with it and they attach it to a resume, which doesn't matter, we're just going to ignore that employee entirely, or that potential employee entirely. So we don't look at those things. We also don't really care if you went to school or where you went to school or what your GPA was. Those things don't matter to us either. We're not hiring you for, we're not trying to admit you to graduate school here. We're trying to, get you to do a job. And where you went to school has no bearing on whether or not you can do a job. And if you graduated from school, doesn't matter either. I think probably 30 to 40% of the people at 37 Signals never finished college. A couple didn't even go. And that's fine with us. That doesn't really matter. We tend to look for things like curiosity. Are people, do they want to learn? Do they really love what they're doing? Would they do it if they weren't being paid? We like to hire programmers who work in the open source world, which is a place where programmers basically contribute their time for free to projects that they like. So if they love programming and they're contributing their time for free to open source, then it probably makes sense that they're going to like our job too, because they also get paid for doing the work that they do here. So that's a good sign. We look for designers who have healthy sort of personal design portfolios, people who love to design stuff anyway because they love design. So we're looking more for those sorts of things than we are for 5 years of experience in this, and I'm proficient in Microsoft Word and that sort of stuff. And then of course we also look for just character and like, do we like the people? Because we have to eat lunch with them, and we have to work with them, and we have to see them occasionally. So we want to like them. It's really important that the people that work at our company at 37 Signals are good people, and we think we've picked well so far. So that's really an important part of it for us as well. I think I skipped one here. Let's see. Okay, let me go back here. Scott wants to know, how do you evaluate a developer's performance, so a programmer's performance? Well, one thing that I think is important to look for when you look for developers is, as I just mentioned, their contributions to open source. That's how we hire our programmers. We typically look at their contributions to the open source world. It may be Ruby on Rails, which is where we hire a lot of our programmers from, people who've contributed to the Rails project or a JavaScript framework or something like this. And the reason why this is important is because you can go back and look at their work. You can actually look at the real work that they did. Which is not the case if you try and hire somebody based on a resume with previous work experience at different companies, because you can't confirm their work at other companies. If someone says, I worked on this program and this program and this program, they can't show you their code because the code's proprietary. They probably worked on that code with a lot of different people, and it's very hard to really discern what someone actually did. So if you hire people from the open source world, you can go back and look at their commits. You can look at any documentation that they wrote. You can see how they work with other people remotely, because the whole open source world is all about remote working. You could have hundreds of programmers working together across the world on projects. So if people are able to work in that environment, they're probably going to work pretty well in our environment too. So I think at the end of the day, you have to figure out a way to evaluate the real work that someone's doing, not the work they're describing themselves as having done. Anyone can say they worked this and they worked on that, and it's very hard to verify that. But if you say, I did this on this open source project, we can go back and look exactly at the code. We can look how clean it is, if it makes sense, what it means, did other people like it, was it accepted in the product. I mean, we can look at these things, and that's the best way, I think, to evaluate a developer in terms of just their fundamental code skills. And of course, you still have to look at them as a person, because the best coders don't matter if they're, idiots, or if you don't like to be around them, or if they're prima donnas, or they have huge egos. That's not the kind of person you want to be around. So I don't care how good somebody is. If you don't want to be around them, then there's really no reason to hire them.